By late 1944, the Western Front had reached a dangerous stalemate. The stunning success of D-Day was now a muddy memory, and the final, brutal reality was the River Rhine. Historians agree, if the Germans had successfully held the Rhine, the war could have been prolonged by another year, costing hundreds of thousands of lives. Why? Because the Germans were concentrating their last best divisions, the most fanatical, most hardened SS and Wehrmacht units, onto the eastern side of this final water barrier. The Allied High Command faced an impossible logistical nightmare. To cross the Rhine, they needed to move a massive force: tanks, trucks, artillery, field hospitals, all the equipment needed for a sustained invasion. The moment a German reconnaissance plane or a forward listening post detected the sound, the movement, or the sheer concentration of troops, they would unleash a wall of steel, turning the staging areas into mass graves. General Eisenhower was not looking for a bloody head-on fight. He was looking for a miracle. He was looking for a secret weapon that didn't fire bullets, drop bombs, or sink ships. And the solution he signed off on was so audacious, so completely ludicrous. It involved high art, jazz musicians, and the biggest collection of children's pool toys ever assembled for combat. This is the unbelievable story of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the Ghost Army, and the 3 dumb pricks they used to save over 15,000 Allied soldiers by fooling the entire German High Command. The man in charge of this unprecedented experiment in psychological warfare was Colonel Harry L. Reeder. He didn't ask for conventional soldiers. He asked for creatives. The requirements for joining the 23rd were less about marksmanship and more about imagination. They recruited artists, architects, sound engineers, actors, and radio personalities. Think of the biggest names in American post-war design and fashion. They were there. Future fashion designer Bill Blass, abstract artist Ellsworth Kelly, and famed photographer Art Kane all served in this tiny, unique unit. Their mission was unprecedented: to impersonate any Allied unit of 2 divisions or less. They were an army of chameleons. This meant they needed the right gear, and their gear was truly absurd. Imagine a full-size M4 Sherman tank, a heavy metal beast weighing 30 tons. Now imagine a tank that could be carried by 2 men, inflated with an air pump and deflated into a canvas bag the size of a laundry basket. These were the inflatable decoys. The detail was astounding. The rubber engineers had to calculate exactly how a real tank looked from high altitude: the shadows, the shape, the profile. The artists in the unit would paint mud and oil streaks onto the rubber tanks to make them look used and real. This visual deception was the first trick, designed to fool German reconnaissance planes. But the Germans knew how to spot a bluff. This required the next layer, the acoustic attack. Part 3. The 3 layers of the rubber tank trick. The men in the 3132nd Signal Service Company had perhaps the most bizarre job in the entire military. Their weapon was the Sonic Deception Unit. They engineered massive, state-of-the-art sound systems, speakers mounted on half-tracks capable of projecting sound for miles. Think about the sound of a staging army. It's not just engines, it's the squeak of metal, the muffled talk of thousands of men, the clatter of mess kits, and the subtle changes in tire pressure on the roads. The engineers meticulously recorded 13-minute loops of these sounds, carefully mixed to reflect exactly what a real army unit would sound like, moving in, staging, resting, and preparing for attack. At night, they would drive into the fake staging areas and blast these recordings. The volume was carefully controlled. If it was too loud, it sounded fake. If it was too quiet, it was ineffective. This sonic layer confirmed what the German eyes were seeing. But the ultimate layer of deception was the radio spoofing. The German intelligence officers, the Abwehr, relied heavily on intercepted radio traffic. Every Allied radio operator had a unique style, a unique rhythm of tapping out Morse code called a fist. The radio men of the Ghost Army were masters of mimicry. They would perfectly mimic the fists of the real divisions they were supposed to be replacing, sending out huge volumes of fake, low-level chatter, false logistics requests, wrong coordinates, and complaints about food. This convinced the German High Command that the divisions were absolutely where the rubber tanks were, because the radio chatter was too authentic to be a deliberate lie. This combination, visual, sonic, and radio, was the true genius of the rubber tank trick. The Ghost Army didn't just appear for the Rhine. They had honed their skills in over 20 tactical deceptions across France, Luxembourg, and Germany. They were masters of impersonation. They didn't just pretend to be a unit, they lived the part. Case Study 1, the impersonation. At one point, the Ghost Army was tasked with impersonating the real 80th Infantry Division. They wore the 80th's distinctive patch. They drove trucks with the 80th's markings. They even made sure to buy coffee and openly complain about their terrible orders in bars and cafes near the front, knowing that Nazi spies were planted among the local population. They were acting as a leak, feeding the German intelligence network false information, making the spies feel like they'd uncovered a priceless secret. Case Study 2, the final act, Operation Viersen. This was the grand finale. The real main crossing was going to be led by General Patton at Oppenheim. The Ghost Army was sent 10 miles north to the Viersen area to impersonate the US 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions, 2 full divisions. For 10 days they executed every layer of the trick simultaneously. Fake tanks, fake sound, and massive radio traffic. The German response was immediate and overwhelming. We know through intercepted German communication that the German 15th Army was under explicit orders to ignore the other crossings and focus entirely on the massive force they believed was staging at Viersen. Hitler himself was reportedly assured that the main Allied attack would occur where the rubber army was. The sheer concentration of German attention on a few hundred artists and a handful of air pumps was the ultimate success. When Patton's real Third Army crossed the Rhine at Oppenheim, they faced almost no initial opposition. Historians looking at the battle casualty figures have consistently calculated that this deception, by pulling back German artillery and troop reserves, saved at least 15,000 potential casualties. Men who would have died fighting the full force of the German line. The story didn't end there. Every single member of the Ghost Army was sworn to absolute secrecy. The entire unit was classified top secret for the next 50 years. Why? Because the trick was so simple and so effective that the military knew it would be a valuable tool in future conflicts. The men were not allowed to talk about it with their families, their wives, or their children until the entire project was declassified in 1996. When the true story finally came out, it changed how military historians viewed the last phase of the war. It proved that in war, the most powerful weapon isn't a new tank or a bigger gun. It's the ability to get inside your enemy's head. It's the sheer creative absurdity of an artist with a paintbrush and a bag of air who saved more lives than any conventional soldier could have hoped to. But the Ghost Army wasn't the only unit using ridiculous tactics. In the Pacific, one small squadron developed a stupid maintenance trick that made the P-38 Lightning the most dominant fighter in the sky.